want to thank you all for coming tonight. I know we probably still have some late arrivals with the whole football issue in the parking lot, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. Our goal is to have you out of here by 7 o'clock. We don't want this to go on super long. You all have families to get home to. But what we're going to do tonight is we are going to present some information on what the district is faced with and what we're considering, right? We know that we are facing declining enrollment. We are not unlike 75% of the districts in California, who are also over the past 5 years have been facing declines in enrollment. We know there's just not as many kids in the state anymore. So we've been looking at that, we've been watching it, we've been talking about it, and now we find ourselves in a situation post-COVID, and I'll get to some of that information, where we're going to be faced with a difficult decision. And so what we want to do is we want to talk about it. This is your opportunity tonight to give us your feedback, ask your questions, and take a look at the information we present. So what we're going to do is we're going to present some slides. We're going to look at enrollment. We're going to look at local control funding formula. We're going to look at what a community-funded district means, what that means to us, and what it might look like. And we're going to talk about some of the other factors that are related to it. So what I want to do is I just want to start with a little bit about our district, a little bit of history. So first and foremost, what we want to be doing and what we're going to do as a part of this process is ultimately there will be a committee that makes a recommendation to the board. So what we want to make sure, what we want to ensure we do is hold tight to our district values. So first and foremost, we want to maintain a focus on our kids. We want to provide a quality education. We want to focus on high achievement. And we want to make sure we keep that on the forefront of all the decisions that we make. The second thing we want to make sure we do is provide good governance. We want transparency. We want to act with integrity. And we always want to maintain a collaborative nature. So that's part of the reason we're here tonight, is we want your input, we want your feedback. And we also want to ensure that our decision-making within the district is done based on evidence and data. And that's the other reason we're here tonight, is we want to show you some of the evidence and some of the data that we've collected that's going to hopefully help us to drive whatever that ultimate decision is that the board's going to be faced with in December. So a little bit about the history. Interdistrict transfers, as we know, have been a part of this district for decades. We can look at our enrollment trends, but we know that interdistrict transfer students have been coming into this district for well over 30 years. And they have been a part of this district and a valued part of this district. I would never want to lessen or diminish the importance that interdistrict transfer families play and have played in the success of this district over the years. We've also looked at declining enrollment, and probably over the past 20 years, and you'll see a couple of slides coming up, we've been watching the enrollment sort of steadily, sometimes slower than other times. Obviously, COVID was a factor, but we've been watching it decline for a while. As we know, in the spring of 2020, when we shut down, everybody was faced with a rather large hit. And so coming back from COVID, we had families that left us for a variety of reasons. We had many families out in this district who left the area. They moved with family. They moved out of the area because of the impact of COVID on their financial situation, on their family situation, on their employment situation. We had families who just decided to stay with their home district. We were in distance learning. It was difficult to go find an interdistrict transfer form. So some families just made the decision, since we were in distance learning anyway, to stay home. Some families pursued a private school option. Many families pursued a homeschool option. So enrollment during that time took a rather significant hit. We came back to in-person learning in 2021, and then we've watched, again, that gradual decline. So this slide, the next couple slides show that picture. This is a decline over time since about 2010. And you can see there's some peaks and valleys, but back in about 2010-11, we were somewhere nearing 950 students in the district. We're currently at 739. This next slide shows just trends over time The blue line represents enrollment at the beginning of the school year, the red line represents enrollment by the end of the year. So typically, over the course of the school year, our enrollment will bounce around a little bit, but there's typically a slightly lower enrollment by the end of the school year than what we start with. Could be 3, 4, 5 kids. It's not a giant number, but we typically see a little bit of a dip. Big picture is this is a snapshot of 2004 to 2025 in some larger annual increments, but you can just see the steady decline to where we are currently at 739 students. What this slide shows is the impact of the smaller enrollments coming in versus the larger classes moving out. So, you know, we look at it as a net loss or a net gain. So what we look at is, if you look at the top line in the year 17-18, we had 105 students graduate from the 8th grade. In that same year, in the fall, we brought in 87 kindergarten students. So we view that as a net loss of 18 students. So you can see that year over year, the number of students we had in the 8th grade graduating class versus the number of kindergarten students that entered in the fall. So you can see that year over year it represents a net loss. There's one positive year by one student. We know that over time, typically in middle school, we'll get a few more students from inter-district transfers from the high school district. So that number, by the time they get to 8th grade, may bounce up just a little bit. But there's still, in the end, looking at numbers, there's still a net loss that we've been experiencing over time. We also know in the last year that the Salinas City Elementary School District indicated, in no uncertain terms, that they will no longer be releasing new inter-district transfers out of their district. So we have a long history of working with the Salinas City School District and accepting inter-district transfer students from that district. So when you talk about releasing new, it's typically at kindergarten, and that's about 20 students per year. So if they have stopped that practice of releasing inter-district students from their district, we can safely assume that that's going to represent 15 to 20 students per year, and that number carries out over time. That number stays with us through 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. So over the period of 5 to 6 years, you can figure that we're going to lose 80 to 100 students. What I'm going to show you in the next 2 slides is one of the things that has become a challenge for us. In this era of declining enrollment, one of the things that we do is every February, we start tracking our inter-district transfers and we start projecting our enrollment for the following fall. So what you're seeing here is the enrollment tracker from March of 2025, this past year. So we track the grade levels, we look at the inter-district transfer requests that are coming in, we look at our enrollment turnovers from class to class, who's returning, who's not returning, and we start collecting those numbers. You can see in March, looking at all the grade levels, our projected enrollment for the fall at that time was 674 students. Relatively low. Now the tricky part of that is in March is when we have to make our staffing decisions for the following year. So for us, with an enrollment of 674 students, we would have to look at our staffing, and that would likely result in some potential layoffs, which means we would have to start issuing what we call pink slips. Anybody who out there who's in education knows that March is when teachers start to receive pink slips or layoff notices. That pink slip is not a final layoff, it's an indicator to a teacher that for whatever reason you may be laid off. And then the district has until about May to make a final decision. So when we start seeing these numbers in March, we have to start looking at whether or not we need to make layoffs or we need to start issuing those pink slips. Now if we move ahead and we continue to track those numbers, we meet weekly, we track the numbers as they come in. By June, you can see that our enrollment was up to 745 students, which is great news. We know that we received those potential students, we looked at the rollovers, we got some inter-district transfers in. So at that point, we may not need to do the layoffs. The issue for the school district that becomes a challenge is, Do we want to put ourselves in a situation annually where we may have to start issuing pink slips to teachers every single year and then having to come back and rescind those pink slips? It's a difficult practice. It puts teachers in a very stressful situation. If you're a young teacher and you're, low on the totem pole, as they say, and you potentially face getting a pink slip every year for the first 4 or 5 years of your employment, it's very stressful. And the likelihood that you're going to stay facing that potential layoff is very low. So it's a difficult position for us, because I certainly don't want to do that to teachers. I was a young teacher once myself. I wouldn't have wanted to be in that position. So we have to look at, the point of this is we have to look at big picture as we start to consider all of the factors. And so the issue of declining enrollment in the district is a larger issue than, just one set of data or one particular opinion. And this particular enrollment issue is potentially difficult for the district. It's difficult when it comes to attracting and retaining teachers and making sure that we have a staff that's ready to go. We know that there's a teacher shortage in California, so we certainly don't want to be in a position where we've created a difficult situation for ourselves by not having a stable environment for our teachers to count on that job year after year after year. Okay, we're going to start getting into some salaries and some financial information. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Gerardo Villegas, our CBO.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. So just to get started, first slide here is just going over our average salaries that we have. We're comparing some of the districts that we compete for our teachers, and as you can see, Washington is at the very bottom, well under Monterey County and California averages. This is an expenditure summary report. The majority of our expenses is coming out of salaries. A little bit over 80% is our salary, and the rest of it is coming out of bucks, services, and capital outlay. So just kind of want to show you guys a little bit of where our budget is, the majority of our budget is being taken up from. Now, I kind of want to get into a little bit about the funding, how it works. So this, the LCFF calculator is a tool that all districts need to use to figure out how much funding we're going to be receiving. So for this upcoming school year, this is 25-26 data, the base graph is for TK to third grade, it's 11,323 per student, well, per ADA. 4th to 6th is 10,000 for 11, and 7th and 8th is 10,719. So in total, we're receiving approximately $8.5 million, and this is for our 739 students that we have right now, estimating 94% for the entire year. Now, this comparison is going to show you, farther. So the top of it is showing you our 736 students. I think, okay, I'll write it just, yeah. All right, so 25-26 is on the left-hand side, 29-30 is on the far right side. So we have 8.5 million both years. This is, the top portion is going to be LCFF. The bottom portion is community funded. So obviously this year you cannot go community funded. We already have our LCFF and our inter-district students. But now let's say, these are all just estimates. Next year we have 710 students. Basing it off of the information that we have, that we're losing about 20 students per year, we would be receiving about 8.6 million in LCFF funding. Now, if we go community funded, we would be receiving about approximately 8.5 million. Why, you may ask?
I'm going to interrupt just a second. We have a lot of data up here, and I know that's kind of hard to see on the screen, but difference of a little bit under shy of 100,000, right? And you may ask why. And the reason why is although we're getting funded on property taxes, there is a little thing under the LCFF calculator that's determining that we would become community funded, but there's also a little line at the bottom that's saying we get state aid. State aid is adding in approximately $800,000 on top of our property taxes. This is also taken into consideration. Spoke to a few colleagues of mine, and they determined that year after year we're getting approximately 4% increase in property taxes. This is just being conservative, and we're using a 2.5% property taxes instead of 4%, just to be on the conservative side. So as you can see, there's a difference of under 100,000 between going community funded and state and LCFF. The biggest one would be in 27-28, when we would have 690 students staying under inter-district transfers, stay under community funded. We were a little bit shy of 8 million. So the difference at the bottom, I also included, which you'll see in the next slide, is our per pupil expenditure, how much we can actually spend per student. So this year we're at 11,629. Next year we're at 12,116. That number stays pretty much the same, 12,000 to under $12,700. But going under community funded, we go from 11,629 to 18,985. So this is showing you the comparison of how community funded versus LCFF is affected in the budget, and how the big difference, our biggest difference would be obviously, I'm just estimating, would be next year, but every year after that, it's about $5,000 difference per student. So I'm gonna turn this over to Joe. He's gonna go over Sept. Go ahead.
Okay, so the three principals are gonna come up and talk about funding in their area. So I'll start with special education. Just a little background under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Every student is entitled to a free education at public expense, tailored to meet their unique needs, which is part of the law. So it's our requirement to provide special education services. Maintenance of effort is also a federal requirement under IDEA that ensures that a school district doesn't reduce its spending from year to year. So to simplify it, you can't spend less on education. You have to spend more every year. So that's something that we work against for special education. There is some different things that come up. If you have a high value placement, a high expense placement, those kind of things can be taken off your maintenance of effort once that placement is over. But that's something that we have to deal with, increasing our special education spending every year. Here's a chart right here that shows our maintenance of effort from 2011 on. The numbers are pretty large, so they didn't fit in the data label, so you'll see if you're following on your phone. The next slide shows the actual numbers. So you can see that we're increasing, you can see that increase, that maintenance of effort continue to increase. You'll see if you drew a line right there, it's always going up to meet the requirements of the law. Here's the funding that we spent. In 2011 and 12, where we first start here, we're at 621,000, and last year we were at 1.6 million. This year we're looking at probably around 1.8 due to some placements and some different changes. So large expense that we're going to talk about here. I'll go into some specifics on what actually makes up that budget. So like I said, the next slide will look specifically at expenses and what we're spending. Our current caseload, for your information, is 57% in-district students and 43% outside of district students. A move to community funding does not necessarily reduce these costs. Okay? Some variable costs may be slightly reduced due to the reduction in students, but fixed costs like staffing is going to remain the same. We're still going to need special education teachers at every site. We're still going to need an OT. We're still going to need an SLP. We're still going to need a psychologist. So the funding for special education doesn't necessarily change with a community funded district. So it's just something to think about And as we keep up and as this maintenance of effort continues to get higher and higher over the years, can we continue with our LCFF funding this huge cost of special ed? Okay, just a little bit of details here. Staffing, we have 4 special education teachers, 12 special education aides, 50%, my job's half principal, half director, so 50% director, school psychologist, SLP, and occupational therapy for a cost of approximately $1.1 million. That covers all of our staffing. Outside placements, so when we cannot serve a student's needs within our district due to not having an adequate program for whatever the disability is, we must place them. We're still, if they live within our district boundaries, we are responsible for placing them and finding a program that works for them. Not only finding, but paying for that program that comes with them. So we have a handful of students placed at Monterey County Office of Education classes and Monterey Peninsula Unified School District for a cost of about $250,000 at $251,000 for placements. Along with that, if you're placing a student, you are responsible for getting them there, and it's very expensive. Special education transportation, we pay $276,000. It has to do with routes. If a student has a dedicated route, which a lot of ours do, based on our demographics, if they're the only person on that route, you're paying for the full expense of the bus. If there's 5 people on that route, you know, a more populated area, if you're coming from, you know, South Salinas, there's likely to be more kids on a bus, or if you're going to South Salinas, whatever it may be. On our route, it's a little bit hard. There's not very many kids that are placed in a program that live at the top of, you know, or in the loop back there. So a lot of these kids are on their own transportation, which is why we have a high cost. I'm trying to be a little bit transparent because, again, we're a small number of students, so I want to make sure confidentiality remains in this conversation, because oftentimes we're talking about 1, 2, or 3 students that have placement or are receiving special services. Educationally related mental health services. So again, under IDEA, if a student's emotional or behavioral needs directly impact their education, their ability to learn, we must provide mental health services through their IEP. We pay about $18,000 for that. It's kind of a lower cost. It's gone up quite a bit actually, and it's going to continue to go up. We have the most kids right now in our mental health services program that we've ever had, so that number is going to go up again this year once we're done this year. We have a rising number of students on IEPs, which we are not alone in that. Our current caseload stands at 87 students, which is above the 10% threshold that is a recommendation of the state. So we are above that, and you know, it is what it is when kids need services, that we give it to them. So we just have to manage that and make sure we stay within those bounds. Legal fees, which are continuing to rise, we are billed at $400 an hour. Our contract last year just for special education legal services was at $37,000. We have a whole other fee for other district items that we work with the law firm for, so that's going to go up this year, I can guarantee you. We are probably getting close to that number as we speak, since we've had some litigious cases within the first month of school. We settled a case in 2024 for a cost, and then we have potential cases upcoming. One case has a likelihood of being a 6-figure case, so that's something that we have to plan for. Services for students within district placement, I put it at about $150,000. That's specialized aids, that's assessment materials, and that's supplies to run the program. You have to keep in mind that the services within the students, sometimes we're dealing with 1 or 2 students. Okay, so that $150,000 doesn't go very far. Independent educational evaluations. Parents have a right to request an IED at public expense if they disagree with the results of an assessment. We've had a few of those recently, so our cost right now is at about $30,000, but that's variable. You know, you can have no IEDs in 1 year in our district, or you can have 10. And we pay $10,000 for one, so it can be a $100,000 bill, it could be a $0 bill. That's the hard part that we have to work with within our budget. And then lastly, the last thing I'm going to talk about is Part C to B transition. So as an elementary school district, we become responsible for students when they turn 3 years old. And that is a complete wild card for us, right? We have no idea who lives within our district boundaries, and we have no idea who's walking in the door at 33 months old when we are responsible for assessing them. So that is highly variable. We never know what we're going to get. Sometimes it's as simple as speech need, where a student needs 30 minutes a week to work on their R's, right? Or it could be something where a student needs a $150,000 placement with a $100,000 transportation fee. So you're looking at anywhere from $0 to $250,000 or more for one student. So special education is a large part of our budget. It's continually growing, and it's really something that we have to work with it, and it's really hard to budget for. So.
Good evening, my name is Olivia Mary, I'm the principal at Washington Union, and I'm also the director of curriculum. So to be fully transparent, I put a slide up that shows exactly what we spend our money on regarding curriculum. So for a 739 person district, we spent $710,627. What I did is I broke down the numbers based on what we purchased. So our amplified curriculum is our language arts curriculum. So for our district currently, we spend $216,066, and that's for our K-5. And curriculum is interesting that you buy it in sets of years. So what I did was, and I want to thank Ms. Reggio as well for crunching the numbers with me, we decided to have one slide that has all of the contracts, and what we did was we decided to divide it into a 440 person school so that you have the comparison up there. Again, this is based, the numbers for the 440 proposed school district is based on the current 6-year, 7-year contract. So I can't guarantee that in 9 years or 6 years, the prices will be exactly the same, because they're gonna go up as we go through the years. But for example, Amplify, we have a 6-year contract, so that's gonna be expiring in 2029. So I can't exactly guarantee exactly the price point for that school year when we go into the next contract cycle, but I just wanted to let this sit up here so you guys can look at the different comparisons.
The internet is working, so that's good. I'm Mike Muchnick, I'm the principal at Toro and also the technology director. So not too much information to report, but traditionally we've had about a $35,000 cost for updating our Chromebook devices. And what the district has historically done is given these new devices to our 4th grade students who then use them through their 8th grade year. Which is a great way to do it. But it means that our 8th graders are using 4-year-old devices that typically have a lifespan of about 2 years. So we're one-to-one starting in 3rd grade, but our TK through 3 devices are usually only updated as needed or they stop working. And traditionally we've been rather limited in terms of the funding for our network infrastructure. And our most recent internet outage is a combination of a lot of things. Started with a power outage, but we're using equipment that is not designed for the scale that we're at as a school district. We're also using equipment that we get for free from larger districts that are upgrading, and so our aging equipment or our used equipment, with a combination of a lot of different things, kind of contributed to the situation that we have started this year. So I'm glad to say that we're almost done. We're still working on the phones at Washington and Toro, but hope to have those up by the end of the week. And given our size, we have to contract IT support, and that's at a cost of about $30,000. And one of the drawbacks of working with a contractor to provide that support is, we're not their only client, so we don't have like on-demand technology support. With our most recent situation, we've been working really closely with the Monterey County Office of Education. They've been very generous and grateful in donating their time and helping us get back on our feet. So those are kind of the cost for educational technology at this point.
Thank you, everybody. So this is kind of where we are. The challenges we're facing, right? So we know the cost of what it takes to run the district.
Run.
Oh, is that one?
Go.
So we looked at the costs associated with running the district. What we want to be able to do is recruit and retain staff so that we can offer the highest possible program for our kids in an environment that supports that. So sort of the choice here, or the dilemma that we're facing is what to do about it. Costs are increasing. It's getting more and more difficult with rising special education costs, rising healthcare costs, remaining competitive in the salary rates with our surrounding districts. So the dilemma now is how to move forward. If the board makes the decision to pursue the community funding model, that would result in not taking inter-district transfer enrollment. So that's the huge piece. We all know that's the weight that's hanging around our necks right now, because that's a giant decision that our board is going to be faced with. Part of the effort now is to form a community committee that will look at all of this. And we'll meet 3 times. We have some community members that will be represented on the panel. And we'll look at all of this to eventually and ultimately make a recommendation to the board. But that decision will rest firmly in the hands of the board when that time comes in December. So if we were to make that decision and go to a community-funded model, certainly the revenue would change in our favor. We would have a higher per pupil expenditure within the district. Could we remain a local control funded district? Absolutely. I cannot stand up here and tell you that that's not a possibility. However, what comes with that are continued challenges. Staying competitive in the salary race, keeping up with those special education costs, keeping up with healthcare costs. We know this year, the healthcare costs for teachers, to all staff, rose significantly. Our carrier rose, they raised their rates 24%. Now, our district graciously offers a cap, so we fund up to a certain amount. Well, that cap didn't get changed, so that 50% or 24% increase to the rates that was raised just this last month is going to result in some cases, a 50% out-of-pocket increase to our employees. So there are employees whose monthly out-of-pocket insurance rates went from $200 to $400 to $500. Some are paying $900, $1,100, $1,200 depending on their plan. So all those costs will continue to go up. They will continue to impact this district. We could struggle along, but that path will be difficult, and we'll be faced with challenges along the way. If we choose to go to the community-funded model, the changes to the district will be significant. We know that. We know that will be a decrease of about 40% of our enrollment if we stop taking inter-district transfer enrollment. That result will then impact our staff, and so it will result in layoffs. So we will lose valued staff. We will lose admin support. In this district, we're not a huge district. What you're looking at is it. In many districts, each one of our principals also wears a director's hat. In many districts, those roles are separated out, and you'll see a full-time special education director, you'll see a full-time technology director, and possibly an IT staff. You'll see a student services department with a curriculum director and associated staff. We cut pretty close to the bone in this district, and you may challenge that, you may question it. I would just offer, go look at other districts and look at their administrative structure. We do what we need to do with as close to the bone budgeting as possible, and so this is a pretty thin administrative team when it comes to the amount of responsibility that they shoulder. But there will likely be a change to the admin structure, for sure. There will obviously be some reductions in classified staff. If we go community funded, there will likely be some potential for additional staff that could support the district. When we look at it, and this is just a spitball of what the potential changes could be. We could look at the possibility of potentially putting instructional aides in the elementary level classrooms so that every teacher has some support on a daily basis. We could provide reading specialists so that we have reading specialists and intervention and support in real time, in the classrooms, on a daily basis, on an ongoing basis. So those are things that we don't have the luxury right now of having. So those are things that could change. For the past almost 30 years, WOOF and now STAR Foundation has supported the art and music program. For a long time, they paid for 2 positions, our art docent director and our music director. About 6 or 7 years ago, the music position came back to the district and we funded it through our general fund. But STAR Foundation still funds the art docent director. So if we go to a community funding model, it's very likely that the district would be able to take those back. That would free up the foundation to fundraise a little more freely and not have that ongoing annual responsibility of paying for people. And then we have to, at some point, obviously have the conversation about the future of Washington Union Elementary School. There's a lot of passion, there's a lot of feeling there, but if we are down to a district of 420 kids, it's not likely that we're going to need to staff 3 schools. So we'll have to make some of those decisions down the road. Those wouldn't be immediate decisions. Those are things that the board would have to grapple with, and we would have to look at, what we're doing and how we're supporting that. But those are all potential changes, okay? We want to be sensitive to this issue. We know it's a painful issue. We know it's a painful conversation. With 40% inter-district enrollment, we know that no matter which decision is made when the time comes, half of you are going to be upset by this. We're going to be upset by either way we go, because it will dramatically impact our district. We understand that, but we have to be real, we have to be thoughtful, we have to be smart about it, and we have to make a decision that in the end is in the best interest of the district and the students of this district, and ensuring that we can continue to provide quality education in quality facilities in a quality environment. So, that's what we have in terms of our presentation. What we would like to do now, and what time is it? It's about 6:15, so for the next 30 minutes or so, we will open up the microphone, and we will take your feedback, your questions, your concerns. We are recording all of it, and then we will have responses to everything that we're going to put out on the website, on Parent Square, so that we ensure that every question is answered and everyone has an opportunity to see both the questions and the answers to those questions and comments. So I'm going to put the microphone here, and if you have something, I would invite you to come up, and we'll go one by one. We would ask that you limit your comments or your remarks or your questions to 3 minutes so that we give everybody in the chance, everybody in the room, the respect of having an opportunity to speak, if you wish. Oh, and if you could just state your name when you ask your question so that we can get that recorded.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Monica Glover, and I just want to thank you all so much for that wonderful presentation and all of the information and data. First and foremost, I know I just have a few minutes, so I just want to say how much I love Washington Union School District. I have a son who's been in the district since kindergarten, and he's in 6th grade. And I have a daughter who's been here since kindergarten, and she's in 2nd grade. And Mrs. Heidemann was my son's kindergarten teacher. So that was when I first fell in love with Toro Park School. So I just want to say, one of the things that I haven't heard discussed was the possibility of renewals. I'm out of district. We utilize the interdistrict transfer system, which I'm very, very grateful for. We've had a wonderful experience. And what I haven't heard mentioned is the possibility of continuing to have students on the renewals and implementing a phased out approach. According to the California Department of Education, viable solution and would give more per pupil funding, but be less of a blow to the community. And some of those alternatives include option 1, closed to new transfers only, starting with TK and kindergarten, then progressing each year to include 1st through 8th graders. Allow renewals only, and LCFF revenue will continue for all returning students to allow funding for all students who attend. This will alleviate the abrupt decline in major staffing and infrastructure changes and allow WUSD to maintain a more stable revenue stream. Because one of the concerns is, how sustainable is this really in 10 years, 15 years? How many young families are saying, I have an infant and I'm moving into Toro Park or Corral de Tierra? It's a beautiful area, but where does this leave the district in 10, 15 years? If the enrollment is at 420 next year, is it at 200, 300 in 10 or 12 years? And we could potentially have 400 students at Toro Park School by itself. That's been something that's happened in the past. So there's, as Mrs. Shelley mentioned, there's no need for really 3 school sites. So another alternative that's viable, and I'm obviously advocating for my children, but even as an unbiased person, if I was to hear this conundrum walking down the street, I would still come up with these same solutions as an unbiased person, because I do feel like it's a big impact for the community psychologically and socially, emotionally. But another alternative would be TK Kinder 1st closed to all transfers, 2nd to 8th renewals only. This allows a progressive phase-out transition, and the board would simply need to update the VP AR 5117 transfer guideline to reflect the change and then communicate the new policy updates to families and districts who allow transfers. Even if the district were to allow all renewals with a hybrid approach, per student funding will still increase about $3,000 per year by 2035, from about, based on the rough estimates that I got, from $14,550 to $17,700 per pupil by 2035, and balance the community impact with funding goals to allow for more stability in the district in the event of unknown variables like parcel taxes, an aging population, how do we vote on bonds? There's all these other variables that can come into play. Declining enrollment can continue to happen throughout the state, and is especially here. And really quick, in closing, I've heard a couple people try to equate Washington Union School District to Carmel Union School District, and there's just really no comparison because of the land mass here, the amount of commercial properties and the value of properties in Carmel. They're working with a budget of like $72 million in the 24-25 school year, according to the Legislative Analyst Office. And so they have like $35,000 per pupil funding for 2,300 students, whereas obviously our per pupil funding, even with basic aid, is much lower because of the properties here in this area. Not to throw shade on this area, but it's as beautiful as it is, it's just not Carmel. So, or Fiji. So, anyways, that's all I have, and I think I went over my 3 minutes.
Okay, I think most of you know who I am, but I'm Andrew Hogan, a 7th and 8th grade teacher here at San Venancio for history. So I'm coming here to ask about what is possible here at the middle school level, because I have heard a rumor about bringing up multiple subject credentials at the 7th and 8th grade level. Don't know if that's particularly true, but I have heard it, and it's been murmured here and there. Anyway, my understanding is that going with multiple subject credentials at the 7th and 8th grade level would mean that the classes would be self-contained at the 7th and 8th grade level, which I think would be absolutely catastrophic for those grade levels. Essentially, I think that this district would be offering 7th and 8th grade on paper, but then essentially families would be forced to take their kids to Palma or Santa Catalina or Interdistrict Buena Vista, because we wouldn't really be offering a traditional 7th and 8th grade opportunity. 7th and 8th grade is not elementary, it's not meant to be elementary, it's not meant to be in the same classroom with the same teacher all day, it's meant to be secondary. It has been going back to my grandmother, who went to a junior high when it was 7th, 8th, and 9th, actually, was junior high back in the day. Of course, I have to advocate a tiny bit for myself, because if a multiple subject credential model were adopted here at San Venancio, I would get laid off. And pretty much everyone that teaches 7th and 8th, minus maybe one, would get laid off here at San Venancio. So I have to advocate a tiny bit, but I do think regardless of my own impact, I think it would be really, really bad for 7th and 8th graders. Essentially, I would like the administration, the district to pledge that unless, of course, we go down to like 15 kids per grade level, because obviously that's a whole different ballgame. If we still are in the, at least one full class or two full classes, that you maintain having departmentalized instruction at the middle school level with 7th and 8th grade, because I think that's really important for those grade levels as they move on to high school, because we already are really small heading off to a big school like Salinas High School where most of our kids go, but I could imagine being in an elementary environment in 7th and 8th going off to 9th at Salinas High School. Ooh boy, would that be a change. So I'd like that pledge at some point in the future. Thank you.
Okay, since nobody's getting up, I'll speak to both of those very quickly. Monica, beautifully put and great points, and all things that we have considered in the background. Part of the process will be to determine if the decision is made to do this, how are we going to do it? And so that's part of the overall picture of what does that look like if the decision is made to do that. So, we don't want to rush into like, this is what's going to happen, done. We want to make sure that through the committee process, we vet all possibilities and we make appropriate recommendations to the board for potential timelines. So yes, I do thank you for bringing that up, but that is all part of the discussion, absolutely. Mr. Hogan. Mr. Cardinal's a answer.
All right, so we've been working on some stuff just in the background. I wanted to save this. Sorry, I want to save this for more committee work because I didn't necessarily think it was the time to share it here. But this was something, since Andy brought it up, I might as well share it here. So, anyways, if we were to move to community funding, something that we've talked about is keeping the middle school intact. It would be really hard to send a 7th or 8th grader out for 1 year. That just doesn't seem right. So we wanted to come up with a plan that makes a little bit of sense at the middle school. So this is completely hypothetical. I just felt like I needed to start somewhere, right? And start looking at what we can do at the middle school. So what I did was if the decision was made for the 26-27 school year, you have a schedule here. I mean, things could change on this. I can flip sections and all kinds of stuff. Master scheduling is not easy, but there's often small tweaks that you can make. So in looking at this schedule, this keeps our entire staff intact in the 26-27 school year if we were to move to basic aid. And an entire staff at the middle school, I'm talking middle school specific. So again, this is just an idea of what we might have here in year 1. Mike, can you go to tab 2? So if you look at the next tab, as we graduate out classes, on the bottom of the sheet. Okay, as we start to graduate out classes, right? So we're gonna have a big, what we would be looking at, right, is we would stop taking interdistricts at Washington if this is what was planned. This is what I'm playing out in my head. We would have a small 6th grade class in 26-27, a large 7th grade, and a large 8. So now when you go to the next year in 27-28, you have a small 6, a small 7, and a large 8. So at this point, you would start the potential progression of layoffs with teachers. And in this case, we would keep one teacher of each subject matter, keeping the departmentalized structure that Andy was talking about right there. I too believe that it would behoove us to keep the departmentalized structure, so we have that in place. And then if you can go to the last tab, Mike, and then the 3rd year out, no layoffs required. We have our staff kind of set at this point. And what I've kind of dreamed about, and something that I would like to do, is intervention with our teachers. This would provide a school-wide intervention program. Ms. Frazier sitting right in front of me, she does a lot of it now. But it provides intervention throughout, or the possibility of working through this in a different way. Something that I've always envisioned that would be super helpful would be an intervention teacher. Having an extra teacher at the middle school that provides that intervention services for our kids that need it. So again, this is, no decisions have been made. This is me kind of brainstorming, thinking through feedback that we've got and my own feelings on departmentalized classes, but yeah, at least that kind of gives us an idea of where we can go, keeping that structure.
Okay, I just prepared to say some sorries, and I know you've all heard me talk at every meeting since, but I'm encouraging anybody here, please come up and say something. The progression of this district has been on a not great trajectory. I don't see how changing to going to basic aid is gonna change that. This financial problem has been a problem since before COVID, and there's been no planning to make any changes. What's gonna change once we go to basic aid and have all this money? I don't know, because we knew this was gonna be a problem before COVID. We were able to kick the can down the road, as people keep saying, who aren't good enough at talking, for years, and COVID actually really helps that, because we got a lot of funding. But what's gonna change once we go to basic aid? Sure, we'll get like $6,000 more a student, which is huge. But I don't understand this. I don't think it's gonna make our district better when we're competing in an area where people can afford to send their kids to schools like Santa Catalina, where they're getting an amazing education. I would prefer to keep my kids here so that they can play with their kids and go to school with the kids that live in their neighborhood. But when their education is not strong, like, I mean, my daughter's getting art 2 days a week, she's getting Spanish 2 days a week, she's going to PE like 3 days a week with a specific PE teacher. Like, you can't compete with that when you have families who can afford to go there if you don't have a school district that isn't able to like really bring up these kids. The public school systems in California are failing. I get it. But we live in a community with like people who are so strong, who are showing up to these meetings, who are supporting WOOF financially, not WOOF anymore, but STAR. But we are just not, the community is not strong enough, or the organization is holding on so strongly to everybody here's money, because there's no good plan for where it should go. So I think people need to get up and talk and let everybody know, let the board know, let everybody know that something else needs to change. So, sorry, keep on getting up here, but something else needs to change.
I have a question. Like you just mentioned, PE. We are a district that all of the teachers double dip, they teach PE where other school districts have a PE teacher. With the increase in funding, is that something that would there be money to hire a PE teacher at like the elementary site level?
Potentially, yes.
To expand those kind of programs? Science teacher, probably.
I mean,
But there's those specialty kind of teachers that other districts.
those would all be things that we would at least be able to look at and be able to consider. You know, keeping in mind that in a public school environment, a multiple subject credential qualifies a teacher to teach all subjects. So a PE specialist is considered a luxury. A science teacher is considered a luxury. In a community funded environment, those would all be options that would be able to be on the table if the district chose that path, for sure. Yeah, I wasn't really planning on saying anything, but you all need to know that the 24% insurance increase is a decrease in our pay. For me personally, it's 400% a markup in my healthcare. So I have to choose to stay in the same plan and pay 400% more, or go to less healthcare and pay 200% more. So it's on the backs of our pay. For years and years and years, these teachers have taken it, and so have administrators. We are all here because we love to be here, but we're paid shit. We're paid nothing. We're not competitive. I don't even like to use the competitive salary. It's not competitive. You saw the numbers. We just got at the 30-year mark, 2 years ago, we got to the $100,000 mark for a teacher. Other districts, you can get that in year 6. It's not okay. The amount of teachers that can afford to live in this district are 6, 7 teachers, maybe out of 38 that can even afford to live here. So they have been, I would say your planning is also on the backs of all of our pay. We don't get the pay raises. We get no paycheck, no pay raise, or the minimum amount, whatever the state is offering for COLA, which sometimes in the past 15, 20 years ago, we would put a lot of that money on our healthcare. So we had great healthcare, but our pay wasn't great, and that made teachers want to stay. But we reached a point where you can't put any more on it because we need money on the pay scale. We need money. I love every kid from everywhere you're from, but the teachers here need a competitive salary to make them stay. Us at the top, we're not going anywhere. We can't go anywhere. When you leave, you lose your years. You go down on the scale for whatever school district you go to. So I have 25 years. I'm going to take a 15-year pay cut just to go somewhere else. It's not happening. But for our younger teachers that are in the first 10, they're going to leave. No matter what, they're not going to be able to afford to stay here because we can't afford to keep them. And for the people that have said that they have not budgeted well, I would say they budgeted too much. I don't know what their reserve is, but they'll tell you. And it's really high, and teachers have complained for years, your reserve is too high. We want that money, we need the money to stay here. But I think because we have that reserve, we might have kept us out of this a little longer because they've been able to use some of that money to get us a little further than before. And if we don't do something, I've been to a recent president's conference, I am the teachers union president. If we don't do something, the state takes over. It looks very different. When the state takes over, they'll say, you don't budget your money, so we're in charge. We will we'll bring in our own superintendent, we're gonna bring in our own board, they are in charge of staffing, they make the class sizes higher based on the number of students because it's a financial issue. It's very different. You don't want the state to be in charge of it. You want to have this board be in charge of it and let the school be in charge of it, because state-run schools are not the same, and it's happening all over California with schools that really did mismanage their money, and the state just come in and the parents have no say in it. And you might have a class with 35 students and they're gonna say, too bad, you can't afford it. That's what you get. So that's what I have to say.
Well, my name is Billy Parrott. I want to thank you guys for presenting all the information. I was kind of new to a lot of it, so I have a better understanding of what's going on here. And the timeline for this meeting is really helpful for me too. I have words, so it was helpful for me to be here afterwards and check to do that. So thank you for doing that. And then lastly, I would like to just encourage you to consider the phase out or grandfather off for inter-district transfer students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
change is gonna happen. The going to basic aid is inevitable, and I know that. I'm not here to say, let's stay with, inter-district or with FCC, but we need to think about the plan. That's on the agenda. We need a plan. We wanna know the plan. Joe, I appreciate you having given us that little snippet. That gives me so much peace of mind, just to know that Layla will still get to be here till the end of 8th grade. I was losing sleep over that. And so for families that are here with 6th graders to think, holy smokes, what am I gonna do next year? That's terrifying. So we need to know sooner rather than later what you're thinking. And yeah, the idea of phasing out, however you do it, whether it's finishing the last grade of that school that they're in, or however, but please, like the gentleman said, a phase out plan is what we're asking for at this point. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Colby James. I have a third grader and a kindergartner at Toro. My daughter's also in the special education program, so really interesting. I hadn't heard any other information about what the state requirements of the law are. And I think just to piggyback off of what was just said, in addition to terms, talking about a phase-out plan, we saw a lot of information about where we stand right now if things go forward. And hey, here's what we would get per student if we made this change to community funding. But, and maybe this is cart before a horse, but what I would be interested in is seeing, okay, with all that extra money, what are we doing? What, to Ms. Riddell's point, are the salaries for the teachers gonna look like? What kind of facility upgrades? And I don't know if the choice to go to basic funding, the plan is to make that before you start doing a budget like that. But I kind of think knowing this information about where we're at versus where we want to go seems really important. And maybe that's been discussed other times. This is my first meeting here. I'm full disclosure, I have no idea what to think. I see good and bad on both sides. Also, there was a comment made right away, as we go to basic aid, we have this increase in funding for our students, and this might just be kind of where, there's no data to back up my opinion on this, but there's a lot of talk about how expensive it is to live in the district. Are we then also making it more expensive? So we've created a different death spiral for the district, but now we're under basic funding. So I don't know if, does that make sense? Yeah.
was called upon to raise money for my school district. And I did it. I made a speech in 4th grade, and I got all this money for my district. I was like the local hero. And that was something that I took with me into adulthood. And it made me appreciate my community. And it made me value the people in my community, and I definitely feel for the teachers. I think the teachers should make way more money. But I also think about those 300 kids that are in their formative years, and they are gonna be shown that community isn't as important as you think it is, and you're sending 300 kids out into the world that are now gonna be suffering with grief and loss, and their families and their friends that remain in the district are suffering for the same things, and we clearly don't have the resources to support that in this county. So that's just one thing. I also wanted to touch on the STAR organization. We are actively raising money. Out of our board, there's 9 people on our board, 5 of them are inter-district transfers. We're working with a $270,000 budget this year. That's what our aspiration is to raise. Over 100,000 of that is for the Art Docent program, but the remaining, we're getting requests from Toro. We got a request that they need picnic tables, the amount of $25,000, and Chromebooks, that's another $20,000. And I know that San Bernardino needs money and Washington Union needs money, so these requests compile quickly. And we are at this point where we're thinking, okay, we're gonna invest $25,000 in picnic tables with money that we've raised as a collective group to benefit a future that we might not be a part of. So we're not necessarily holding these funds, we are trying to adapt to the decisions that are happening and using them in ways that can benefit the students that are here now as quickly as we can. So that's one point I wanna make, and why it's been kind of hard to approve all these requests. Like, do we need $20,000 of Chromebooks if we're not gonna have 700 students? No. But we still need that money because there's a lot of things that the students need now that I think everyone would be really surprised about. We get requests for paper and pencils and like name tags and all sorts of stuff, and that stuff adds up really quickly. So that's just my one piece. But I think my question would be, would the teachers and the staff that enjoy inter-district transfers still be allowed to get their transfers if they remain at this school? Because I feel like I see a lot of people, like, if I'm reading the writing between the lines, and it seems everyone's really for this. But I look around at the staff in the mix, and a lot of the staff enjoy the inter-district transfer as well. So I'm just wondering what the effect is going to be there. But I think deep down, I think about those kids, 300 kids, and they're just going to be kind of cast out. And we work so hard as an inter-district transfer parent, spending 20 hours a week volunteering for the school. It's really hard right now to do that because I'm like, okay, where are all the people coming to support us? So I don't know. That's my piece. I think everyone should be volunteering and giving back because I've seen this presentation about 50 times, 50 different iterations, and I think the more you know, the more power you have, maybe the less you want to know, but I think everyone should be more involved, and I think whatever that means to you is important because this is a big deal. I think it's a big deal, so anyways, thank you.
Just for clarification, is this coming down the pipe because Salinas City says they will not issue the transfers? It's not that we just said we don't want to take any more transfers? How does that
No,
look?
Salinas City's decision to not release was part of it, but it's part of the ongoing conversation about it declining enrollment in the district. Okay.
Can I ask a quick clarification question?
Sure.
Maybe this is really basic, but can you explain the difference in the funding?
Yes,
Just,
you want to?
that was never
Absolutely.
gone.
Okay, so I could touch on a little bit on the portion and the funding. You wanna go back?
Or no, like, what's the difference? Like,
What's the difference between
what
local
is the
control and
basic
funding?
funding?
So local control funding is a formula that was implemented by the state. It was meant to give every student the same base grant for every student in California. Unfortunately for us, there is also supplemental, which other districts receive as long as you qualify, which means you have to have more than 60% of UBP educated students. So on top of the district down the road is getting, rather than 11,000, they're getting 18, 19,000. So, okay, unduplicated. Unduplicated could fall under, free and reduced, low economic, it's,
English learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and foster.
Yeah.
Title I.
Yeah, so essentially, that's a big portion, we don't fall under any of that. Our UPP, which is under 13%, which is very low, down the road, they qualify for it, we don't. So that's why our base grant is just 11,000. Whereas other districts are getting 18, 19,000 for, I hate to say it like this, but for the same students. So the same students coming here, they could go over there and they're getting 18, 19,000 because the school already qualifies. They're just, their UPP is so high that one student does not bring them down under the 55%. The community funded, it's not basic aid anymore, just kind of want to clarify it, but it's community funded. That's based off of the property taxes that reside within our boundaries. So that, you just the easiest way is you get the property taxes within our boundaries divided by the amount of students coming here. That's how you get, your per pupil, your PPE, how much you're getting per student versus a base grant. Now, I know you're bringing up the Salina City, I can touch a little bit on it, but eventually but it's gonna be a little bit difficult, to explain that average. I know you guys are talking a little bit about the phase out. I did multiple, calculators, I'll be honest, I was day and night trying to figure out this, calculator, I was hoping I was wrong, sometimes, you really hope you're wrong. So as we progress down, in enrollment, essentially you come to what we like to say is like a seesaw. And that's the one thing you don't wanna do. You don't wanna be phasing into community funded and LCFF, because one year you're on this side where you're funded by LCFF under 8.6 million. Then the next year, you're considered, community funded under 8.5 million. But you're in and out all the time, you're stopping, you determine on which one it is. With our 40%, we're very deep into, community funded. I talked to a few of my colleagues and I told them, hey, check, out my calculators, what do you guys think? They were all surprised at how many inter-districts we do have compared to other districts. The phase-out approach, what it does, essentially, it does prolong the process, but by the time we're considered, community funded. So, your 690, essentially, if we take these 3 years, 25, 26 to 27, 28, in 28, 29, we get funded on the average of these 3 years. So, each year we start going 20 less students by phasing out. Like, let's say we just stopped taking T-kids, right? It's gonna take 7 years to phase out all the students. But with the one thing that we have to take into consideration is the average is just going to keep us at the same funding. It's not going to increase, it's actually increasing a little bit, even though our taxes, the community taxes here are increasing 2.5% each year. At one point, they're gonna cross paths. So what's gonna happen is you're going to get funded, like, this is just an example, okay? This is, right here, we're only less than $100,000 off before so by having almost 300 students more, we're almost at that crossover where the community taxes already meeting the LCFF funding. So that's where you don't want to be as a district, because if you hit that, that's where that seesaw approach is happening. You're in and out, and districts do that a lot, but it's very hard to project and budget for the following years.
How are your numbers going down as the
Because
years go? If property taxes are raising at a rate of 2.5%, how are you going down from 25, 26 to 29, 30? You're $200,000 less.
On which are the two projections, if you don't mind me
On the
asking?
community funded, if you go from 25, 26, you're at 8.559. At 29, 30, you're at 8.317. If they're supposed to be going up 2.5.
Community, the LCFF calculator actually determines how much we're gonna get funded. So 25, 26, we're at 8.5. So 26, 27, the LCFF calculator is going to determine, it's basically saying, we're looking at your enrollment, your ADA essentially. They're looking at your enrollment and they're saying, you know what? You have 448 students right now. Last year you had 736. So now we're going to fund you on last year's ADA. In 27, 28, it's looking at your 448 students. Now it's going to say, you know what? Last year we had 448, it's the same thing. But when COVID happened, the state passed a policy where now we use a 3-year average. So it's either the year before's ADA or your 3-year average. So now it's using your 3-year average, which in 27, 28, it's gonna use your 448, your 736, and your, how much did we have last year, 746? Like 746. In 28, 29, it's gonna use your 3-year average, and then eventually in 29, 30, it's just going to use the year before. So the LCFF calculator essentially what it's doing is it's giving you what benefits the district more. So it's either gonna do your 3-year average, the prior year, or your current year. So we don't pick and choose and say, hey, fund us on the year before, it's just whatever it is.
So your math and all that is your outside of property tax values, like it has to do with your previous year, your previous 3 years of funding, like, because to his point, like property taxes go up, but in year 3 you drop.
Okay, what's misleading, I think I'm hoping I can clear this up. What's misleading is 448 students are in the seats, but the money is working off of a 3-year average.
Yes.
Correct? Am I
Yes.
right?
Right, I think, Brett here, I think what we're looking at is the state aid add-on.
Yes,
And so the
state
state
aid.
aid add-on is what changes, so property taxes go up, right? Our enrollment in that 1 year drops from 6 something down to 400 and something. So that state aid add-on is what drops. So even though the property tax revenue is gonna continue to increase at 2.5%, in that 1 year when the enrollment would drop from 600 to 400, that little bit of state aid add-on is what makes that difference and causes the little bump down.
Can you show that next time, can you add that to your slides?
Yeah.
Demonstrate that, cause
Yeah.
it's important to us.
Please share the Excel sheet where the formulas are for those rooms.
There you go.
Yeah, I would love a deeper dive into the data. I'm a data person. I'm a budgetary person. I work in higher education administration. So what I've researched is that Washington Union doesn't need to eliminate all transfers. It only needs ADA low enough or property values high enough that local tax divided by ADA is greater than the LCFF target. So I would just love, so a partial phase out approach could get us there and would generate more revenue than where we are now, but not as much as basic aid. So I just wanted to I just wasn't sure where your data came from, so I would love a deeper dive and more transparency in the data, so I can vet that with my data and compare it with what I'm seeing, so I'm just a data nerd, so give me all the data.
Can you also show the future, so this phase out approach, you've got kind of worst case scenario, best case scenario, what does the middle ground look like?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And in our follow-up, we're taking all of this feedback, and we're taking all of your comments in our follow-up, what we will publish, we'll attempt to answer as much of this as we can, and as succinctly as possible. Yeah,
Just a quick question, so that amount, that $11,000 or whatever that we
Yeah.
currently get per student,
has an unduplicated percentage above 55%, then you get a 65% above the base grant add-on. That's where a lot of school districts get a lot of additional funding. So what we get is the base grant, and we get a little bit of additional funding. And that money becomes our district revenue, and that becomes our operating expenses.
Right, but would we, like, if we went to the new model,
Right.
what would happen? We just wouldn't get it?
We would, well, okay, so being community funded assures that what you do is your property tax revenues exceed your local control funding formula revenues, right? So if we get to a point where, because of our enrollment, our property tax revenue is higher than what our total revenue would be under that local control funding formula, then our property tax revenues take over. The way we're currently funded is a mix of our property taxes plus additional state revenue to account for the shortfall that it would take to meet that grant, that funding amount, right? So when we get to the point where we don't need that additional revenue to make up what's missing in that allocation, then we become community funded. So if we have, if that number at the enrollment place is 600 kids, when we get to 600 kids, our LCFF allocation from the state, from the district, becomes lower than what our property tax revenue is. So that's when we exist solely on our property taxes. So whether we have 600 kids or we have 400 kids, we're still gonna get the same amount of property tax revenue, and then we allocate it to a person, then it becomes our per pupil expenditure. So the state revenue sort of goes away because our property tax revenue picks up all of it. Does that kind of make sense? And we can talk more. I'm happy to have you come by my office and we can sit and discuss it, but it's just a balance.
So just by having one inter-district transfer student, it would, or like, is it like a numbers thing?
Yeah, I mean, having inter-district transfer students and using the local control funding formula, that formula is based on students. So, it's what we call butts in the seat. We get dollars for every child in every seat. If we were to go to a community funding model, it's not based on a per student allocation, it's based strictly on property tax revenue.
If you don't mind me adding, a very, very oversimplified remark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen this presentation many times as well. Essentially, right now, somewhere around 80-ish% of our funding per student is from local taxes, correct? And 20% is coming from the state. If we got rid of inter-districts next year, which, I mean, obviously a gradual approach would probably be less painful, but say it all happened next year. We keep that 8% roughly, and only lose 20% of the funding. But we lose 40% of the kids. That's why the per pupil is so much higher. You'd be keeping 80% of the money, but having only, 60% of the kids, roughly. Right? Yeah.
I have a question. What exactly is the goal of the committee? Is it to make the recommendation yes or no right now? Or is it to make an entire recommendation for a roadmap?
Yeah, the goal of the committee is to take all of this information and review it as a community-based group. So it's represented by parents, it's represented by staff. We have community members who we talk to who will serve on the committee. And their task, and then, of course, all of us, absent board members. Because the role of the committee is to review all of this information, make a recommendation on what they feel, they want to give the board a recommendation on what they think the board's best course of action would be in terms of LCFF or community funding. But also part of that would be to consider what would a phased-in approach look like, and what's their best recommendation for if the board makes the decision, what would that approach be? And it might go in other directions in terms of the community work that gets done, and there may be other recommendations that arise out of it. We're gonna keep that open.
Just to clarify, I mean, it sounds like the reason this conversation is happening is, doesn't necessarily need to be an immediate decision, but it is an acknowledgement that we are on this and that we,
Certainly
whether
something
we
that-
like it or not,
but we have to talk about that. And then how are committee members?
So that's what's coming next. So we put a questionnaire out. We have, okay, do you want 2 questions first?
Oh, sorry. Hi, Aaron Fajardo.
Yes.
So, I do have a kid in special education, and I love our district. I'm really simple-minded, not that smart. So it's as simple as, if we keep the same funding model, if we keep doing the same thing, we're not gonna be in district. Is that correct?
I mean, I think eventually it could severely restrict our ability to
I
offer
mean,
what we need to
right,
offer to
because
kids.
you have a certain funding model, you have a pie.
Yep.
Right?
Yep,
The pie's not getting bigger,
correct.
right?
Yeah.
And so you have to divide that, and so people get less of their piece.
Yes.
I don't, Crowley, Sierra, San Venancio, Toro, it's not going to get more people. They're not gonna build more homes. In order to get more families, you're gonna have to have turnover of people who are now empty nesters, selling their homes, et cetera, right? Thinking big picture. And that's their funding model, right? That's at risk, right? Same thing with Carmel, et cetera, right? Where you're not gonna have extra homes, extra monies. And so what are you gonna do with that same pie? And I get the difficult conversation that you're gonna have. Because, yes, I live in the district, but we enjoy, my child enjoys, her friends from out of district. And yes, bringing people in adds to the community. So I don't envy your decision, but I just wanna make it simple to myself. It is a simple thing. If we continue the same road, it's going to end up in heartbreak, where the state takes over because we can't manage our funds. I do have a friend in a different school district who's part of the board, and they're going through the same angst, where it's as simple. In the end, it's decisions made where the pie doesn't change, but if you don't manage it, somebody else will manage your business. And you don't want the state taking over your child's education.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kristen Anderson. It is such a pleasure to see some new faces in the room. This conversation has been going on for months and years, and it has been a very obvious and apparent steady decline in the enrollment, which, to Eric's point, means there's fewer students, so the average daily attendance, the ADA reference made, is going down. But we still have the same expenses, we still have wonderful teachers we want to pay, we want programs to be funded. So as enrollment is declining, we're faced with less and less money to still provide all of those programs and resources. I have children in the district. The friends that they have from outside of the district are just as special as everyone who lives nearby. And it would be devastating to see them leave in 4th grade and not finish through middle school. So while I am absolutely a proponent for making a clear plan, I really hope that if the decision is made to shift to community funded, and if that decision is made to phase out or end our transfers, that is done with a lot of heart, and to let the students finish the whole district rather than their current campus. Because shifting from 3rd to 4th and suddenly being uprooted is really challenging. And having a sibling finish 8th grade but not get to go on to 4th grade feels really unfair. So as much as I want there to be a very accountable financial plan, I hope that our friends and people who contribute to fundraising in the classrooms, that they can see it through and not be cut off. That being said, I don't think many people in this room are aware of how dire the financial situation is. Not too long ago, there was a model of our budget with a projected deficit this year of, don't quote me, $60,000 to find ways to make ends meet. But the next 2 academic years had a projected deficit of $250,000, right, Gerardo? Significant. I'm roughly saying $250,000, and that's not getting all the parents into these seats to figure out what are we doing for our kids. In district or out, what are we doing? We can't just wait until the ship sinks and we say, wow, holy smokes, we got to the 600 point. We still have less funding. We have all these kids we want to teach. We can't just eventually at some point make a decision on the inter-district topic. We have to see and expect a very transparent budget, very transparent listing of how do right to each of you in district and county. I wouldn't feel good having part of your district.
Okay, so, we sent out a parent square post, asking for interest in participating on the committee. And what we're gonna do is we're going to randomly, from your submissions, select, 2 in-district parents and 2 out-of-district parents.
Oh, this is an industry conference.
Yeah, we're 2 in, 2 out, so there's fair representation.
I was like, that's.
CSEA rep and a TTA rep. Okay, so, these are we in? All right, first in district. Amy Crawford. And. Okay, now we're gonna select 2 out of district from your submission. William Perry. Okay, so with that, the meeting schedule was posted, it will be posted again online. Our first committee meeting is October 1st. And so we will take all of the feedback, yeah.
I have a quick question. When the decision is made in December, is that just a yes or no decision, or is that yes, but we're doing it as a phase out? Yes, like, will it be a full decision so that out of district transfers can figure out like their paperwork,
Sure.
like that, plans for registration?
Yeah, whatever decisions are made, the board will make and announce, and if it's a phase-out plan, the board will announce the phase-out plan, so that all families who may be impacted by any decisions made have adequate time to make whatever decisions they need to make. Yeah.
Will the other school districts also be notified that there is an incoming a tsunami of students getting into their district, so
We
they're
are in
well
the
prepared?
process of communicating with all the school districts right now.
Okay.
Lots of information to digest. Some of us don't have our significant others here because they're with our kids.
We'll be posting all the slides as well as all of the questions and all of the.
Yeah, I got the slides, but, after we have this conversation at home,
Yeah,
additional questions, how do we submit those?
you can submit those to me,
Okay.
or we can even work on maybe just posting a page where you can submit questions. We'll figure that out and we'll get that information out to you via Parent Square, so if there are additional follow-up questions, you have a way to get them to us, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So with that, yeah, Adam.
Just want to point out, we do have a parent videoing it tonight too, which is
Yes.
on YouTube.
Oh, so it
She's
will be
not
on YouTube.
associated
That's
with the
right.
district,
Thank you, Whitney.
but she does do this, so if you want to spread the word to other families or friends who couldn't make it tonight, she has the ability to.
Yeah, if you want a QR code, you can scan it, it'll take you right to the YouTube page. I try to post all the board meetings and whatever I'm allowed to videotape for these sort of events, so that families that can't come, or like for me and I can't, and people are like, well, what happened? I'm like, so much. So, and if anybody wants to help, like if you guys have audio ability or a better camera than like an iPhone, like I just show up. So I have a QR code if you want to scan it for the YouTube page.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Remind us, the committee meetings are going to occur the week prior to the normal board meetings, is that right?
Yeah, there's 3. There's October 1st, November 5th, and December 3rd.
So it's the week prior, are committee meetings available to the public as well? Can we just come in and observe?
The intent right now is they're gonna be closed input, and, we'll be seeing you all Thursday.